Welcome back to Hidden Wounds, where we delve into the genuine experiences of individuals who discovered that the most satisfying justice is often the one that takes the longest to achieve. I'm your narrator, and the story we're sharing today is from Arthur, a 60-year-old man who came to realize that if someone takes your family away, you sometimes have to strategically take them back. Before we explore Arthur's remarkable 13-year saga of patience and meticulously planned retribution, please remember that every story featured here highlights the resilience of people who find the strength to rebuild their lives. Be sure to subscribe and click the notification icon, because each week we share powerful accounts of individuals who transform their deepest anguish into their most profound strength. And now, let's step into Arthur's world, where affection, retribution, and familial bonds intertwine to form the most powerful force imaginable. My name is Arthur Ashworth, and at 60 years of age, I've come to understand that certain wounds never truly mend. They harden over time, becoming something stronger, more resilient than even bone. 13 years. That was the length of time that had passed since I had last embraced my grandchildren. Since I had seen their faces anywhere but in fleeting glances on social media profiles that would block me the moment my presence was detected. 13 years since my daughter-in-law, Isabella, had masterfully turned my own son Michael against me, feeding him a steady diet of falsehoods until he embraced her manufactured reality over the man who had raised him. The day that set everything into motion began, like any other, in my meticulously structured life. I was seated in my penthouse suite, overlooking the sprawling city, drinking coffee from a simple, hand-thrown mug that cost more than a young person's monthly rent, while scanning the financial statements that merely echoed the reality I had forged myself. My manufacturing company had grown into a formidable enterprise, valued at $15 million, constructed from the ashes of my life after my beloved wife passed away, leaving me with nothing but staggering debts and a shattered heart. $15 million. Earned over countless 18-hour workdays, sacrificed holidays, and the kind of relentless drive that is born only when everything you hold dear has been taken from you. I had built that corporation not merely for financial stability, but to forge it into a tool. I had learned the hard way that wealth was the only currency that people like Isabella genuinely respected. My phone buzzed at exactly 9:00 a.m. It was my executive assistant, confirming the completion of the sale. Sterling Corp had acquired Ashworth Manufacturing for the exact price I had stipulated, not $1 less. "Congratulations, Mr. Ashworth," Eleanor said, her voice filled with sincere happiness for me. "You are now, officially, an exceptionally wealthy man." "I was already a man of means, Eleanor," I corrected gently. "Now, I am a man of freedom, free to finally set in motion the plan I had spent more than a decade perfecting, free to reclaim what was rightfully mine, one deliberate step at a time." I was examining the blueprints for my new residence, a grand estate in the city's most prestigious enclave, complete with separate guest wings and a large pool house, when the doorbell chimed. On the security screen, I saw a face I hadn't laid eyes on in person for 3 long years. It was Isabella herself, standing on my doorstep, wearing the same confident smile that had once convinced my son to turn his back on his own father. At 38, she was still striking, in that meticulously curated way that only significant money can achieve. Flawless brunette hair, a designer outfit, and a posture that broadcast her unwavering sense of self-importance. Yet, I noticed something new in her eyes, a flicker of desperation that had not been there before. I made my way to the door at a deliberate pace, adjusting my cufflinks and smoothing down my salt and pepper hair. At 60, I had learned that genuine power is most effectively demonstrated through unwavering composure. "Isabella," I said as I opened the door, my tone perfectly pitched to convey polite surprise. "What an unexpected visit, Arthur," she responded, her smile firmly in place. "I hope I'm not intruding by stopping by unannounced. I heard the news about the sale of your company. My sincerest congratulations. Thank you. Although, I must admit, I'm curious as to how you heard the news so quickly." Her laugh was like the clinking of ice in a glass. "Good news has a way of spreading in our circles. May I come inside?" I stepped back, even as every instinct I had warned me against letting this woman into my personal space. She glided into my apartment, her eyes performing the casual inventory of someone mentally appraising every object. "This is a lovely apartment," she remarked, her fingers grazing the antique mantelpiece. "Though I suppose you'll be relocating soon with all that newfound capital." "I am indeed planning a few changes. Yes, that's actually the reason I'm here." She pivoted to face me, and I saw the shift in her demeanor from that of a courteous guest to a predator that had just scented an opportunity. "Michael and I have been discussing things, and we believe it's high time we put the past in the past." "Is that so? The twins are 17 now, you know. They'll be heading off to college before we know it. And Michael feels, well, he feels they ought to get to know their grandfather before they leave the nest." The twins, Leo and Chloe. My grandchildren, who were only 4 years old the last time I held them, who had blossomed into young adults while I could only watch from a distance, through school websites and newspaper clippings, celebrating their academic triumphs. How magnanimous of Michael to finally recall that he has a father. Isabella's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Arthur, I am aware there have been misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" The word was sharper than I had intended. "Is that your term for systematically poisoning my son's mind against me? For relocating him halfway across the country to guarantee I couldn't be near my own grandchildren? For sending back every single birthday gift I ever sent, unopened? That is all water under the bridge. We want to look forward now." I walked over to the large window, gazing out at the cityscape I had in many ways conquered through sheer will. In the glass, I saw her reflection, her eyes still scanning my apartment, undoubtedly estimating the value of each piece of furniture. "And what precisely are you suggesting, Isabella?" "We think you should come and live with us." I turned around slowly, my expression carefully neutral, revealing nothing but polite curiosity. "Live with you? We have that large house in Oak Ridge Heights. There's more than enough space. The twins would be thrilled to finally get to know you, and you could, well, you could assist with things. Things such as financing the very lifestyle they had become accustomed to, a lifestyle I now knew they could no longer sustain on their own. And why would I find that appealing? Because we're family, Arthur. Because Michael misses you, even if he's too proud to say it. Because you've been absent for so much of the twins' lives. This would be your opportunity to reclaim that lost time. "Reclaim that lost time," I repeated, the words tasting like ash, as if the 13 years of stolen memories and missed celebrations were a fault of my own, and not a direct consequence of her actions. Where would I reside in this arrangement? We thought the pool house would be absolutely perfect for you. It's private, yet still close to the main house and the family, the pool house. Not a guest room in the main house where a family member would belong, but the ancillary building, a place for someone useful but not entirely integrated, a place to be kept conveniently out of the way. I let a small smile form on my lips. It was the same smile I had used in boardrooms just before dismantling an opponent who believed they had outmaneuvered me. "That is a very generous offer, Isabella." but I'm afraid I have already made other arrangements." Her facade of confidence began to crack. "Other arrangements? I've acquired a new property, a rather sizable one, as it happens. 15 bedrooms, dedicated guest wings, quarters for staff. I'll be moving in next week." The blood drained from her face as she struggled to process the information. 15 bedrooms? That's an immense house for just one person. "Yes, it is," I agreed. "But I am hopeful that it won't be occupied by just one person for long." I allowed the implication of that statement to hang in the air between us, watching her mind race to calculate its meaning. "The twins will be delighted to visit," she said, hastily trying to steer the conversation back in her favor. "Although, of course, between their studies and extracurriculars, their schedules are quite demanding." "Of course they are. The lives of 17-year-olds are always bustling." I walked over to my desk and retrieved a leather-bound portfolio containing the architectural drawings of my new estate. "Would you care to see it?" I asked, opening it to display the detailed renderings of what could only be described as a modern palace. Isabella leaned in despite herself, her eyes growing wide as she absorbed the sheer scale and opulence of my new home. "My goodness," she breathed. "This must have cost a fortune." "Several million, yes. But one can't put a price on family." She looked up at me, her gaze sharp and suspicious. "Family?" "My grandchildren, Isabella. The family you have kept from me for 13 years. The family that I fully intend to bring back into my life." For the first time since she had walked through my door, Isabella's composure shattered completely. I saw fear in her eyes. Raw, unmasked fear. "Arthur," she began, her voice cautious, "what precisely are you planning to do?" I closed the portfolio and walked to the door, opening it as a clear signal for her to leave. "I am planning to be the grandfather I was never permitted to be. I am planning to provide Leo and Chloe with everything they have ever lacked, and I am planning to demonstrate to them what genuine family love truly is." As she collected her designer purse and walked towards the exit, I added one final quiet remark. "Oh, and Isabella, thank you for the suggestion regarding the pool house. I'll certainly bear it in mind when I decide where to place the staff accommodations at my new estate." The door closed behind her with a soft, definitive click. Yet I knew this was only the beginning. Isabella had blundered by coming here, by exposing her desperation and revealing the precariousness of her financial situation. She had believed she could manipulate my affection for my grandchildren and use it as a tool against me. What she failed to grasp was that love, when properly channeled, could become the most formidable weapon of all. I returned to my desk and retrieved a different set of files, one that I had been meticulously compiling for years. School transcripts, newspaper articles, academic accolades, screenshots from social media, every piece of information about Leo and Chloe that I had managed to collect from the periphery of their lives. The time had come for me to emerge from those shadows and step directly into their world, not as the resentful, cast-off grandfather that Isabella had painted me as, but as the loving, capable, and powerful man I had always been. The battle for my grandchildren was about to commence, and it was a battle I had every intention of winning. If you've ever been led to believe that you're too old to start anew, allow me to tell you that is a falsehood. Your life story is far from finished. There are still many chapters waiting to be written. Our best-selling book, Forging Peace from Pain, is filled with straightforward, potent strategies to guide you in healing, rebuilding, and rediscovering your passion for life. Click the link in the description below and begin your next chapter today. And if Arthur's calculated strategy is already sending a shiver down your spine, you know you are in for a truly compelling story. Please, Press that like button and subscribe for more tales of individuals who refuse to let anyone else dictate their final chapter. That evening, I sat alone in my study, surrounded by the physical evidence of 13 stolen years. There were photo albums that ended abruptly when the twins were just 4, birthday cards that had been returned to me, unopened, Christmas gifts I had continued to purchase each year, storing them away with the faint hope that one day I might be allowed to give them. The last meaningful conversation I'd had with Michael replayed in my mind, a persistent, painful echo. He had called me 3 days after his mother's funeral, his voice cold and distant. "Dad," he'd said, "Isabella and I think it would be for the best if we had some distance for a while. The kids are having a hard time with Grandma's passing, and she feels that having too many people around is just making it more difficult for them to cope. Michael, they need their family around them now more than ever. They need that stability and love. They have that. They have Isabella and me. And what about me? I'm their grandfather. Isabella is their mother, Dad. She knows what is best for them. Isabella knows what's best." Those 5 words had been a thorn in my side for more than a decade. That was the precise moment I understood that my son had irrevocably chosen his wife over the man who had raised him. I opened my laptop and navigated to a folder I had simply labeled Grandchildren. It contained hundreds of images I had painstakingly gathered from school websites, the social media pages of their friends, and local news coverage of their various accomplishments. It was a heartbreaking archive of milestones I had only been able to witness from afar. There was Leo at 12, beaming as he won the State Science Olympiad. Chloe at 14, taking a bow after her performance in the school's production of Our Town. Birthday celebrations I was never invited to. School ceremonies I had watched from the very back of the auditorium. Christmas mornings that unfolded without me. But as I examined the photographs more closely, I started to notice something else. In the unposed shots, in the moments between the forced smiles for the camera, I saw a glimmer of hope. Neither of my grandchildren looked genuinely happy. Leo, so brilliant and serious, often appeared isolated, even when surrounded by his peers. Chloe, with her artistic and sensitive nature, wore a guarded expression, the kind you see on someone who has learned that being vulnerable is a risk. They looked like children who had been managed, not nurtured, controlled, not truly loved. They reminded me of how Michael had looked at their age, before I had learned to temper discipline with affection, before I had fully grasped that love required as much listening as it did teaching. My phone rang, pulling me from my painful reverie. The caller ID was an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Ashworth, this is Eleanor Sterling from Sterling Corp. I hope it's not too late to be calling." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to circle back to our discussion about your philanthropic goals. You had mentioned an interest in supporting educational initiatives for exceptionally talented students." A smile touched my lips. I remembered the carefully worded conversation we'd had during the final negotiations for the sale. Eleanor Sterling was a woman who clearly appreciated the power of strategic philanthropy. "Yes, I am especially interested in programs focused on advanced sciences and creative arts." "Why do you ask?" "My own daughter is a student at Northwood Preparatory Academy, which happens to be the same school your grandchildren attend. I understand they are launching a new advanced studies program this fall and are currently seeking sponsors." Northwood Prep. The very institution where Leo was reportedly a prodigy in advanced physics, and Chloe was the editor of the school's esteemed literary journal. "Tell me more about this program." "It's being created for their most promising students. It involves accelerated research opportunities, professional mentorships, and a level of college prep that goes far beyond their standard curriculum. They are looking for a benefactor to endow the program, to fund new equipment, and perhaps even to mentor some of the students personally. I was already reaching for my checkbook. What kind of financial commitment are they hoping for? Their initial goal was around $100,000, but to be honest, they would be ecstatic with any support. Eleanor, please inform them that I will provide an initial endowment of $250,000, along with any additional resources the students may require. Equipment, materials, specialized college advisors, whatever is needed. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. That is incredibly generous, Arthur. They will be absolutely overcome with gratitude. There is one condition, naturally. I would like to be personally involved in the student selection process, and I wish to serve as a mentor myself, specifically for those students who show an interest in business and entrepreneurship. I am certain they would be honored to have you. Your experience in building a company from the ground up would be an invaluable resource for these young people. After ending the call, I leaned back in my chair, feeling a sense of satisfaction that had been absent from my life for years. Isabella thought she could isolate me from my grandchildren by controlling my son. She failed to realize that there were other avenues to reach them, avenues that would introduce me, not as the bitter, rejected figure she had portrayed, but as the successful, benevolent man they might actually be curious to know. I opened my laptop again and began a more thorough investigation of Northwood Preparatory Academy. The school's website featured galleries from recent events, and there they were, Leo and Chloe Ashworth, photographed at the academic awards night. Leo had secured first place in the regional physics competition. Chloe had been honored with the Creative Writing Prize for a collection of her short stories. They were extraordinary. These grandchildren I had never truly been permitted to know. And if Isabella believed she could keep me from them by fortifying the walls around her home, she was about to discover that some walls are merely obstacles to be surmounted by those with enough determination. I devoted the remainder of the night to meticulously planning my strategy. This would not be the desperate, demanding approach of a spurned grandfather, but the patient, calculated methodology of a man who had constructed an empire from nothing. Isabella had made a single, fatal miscalculation. She had presumed that 13 years of exile had left me weakened by sorrow and isolation. In reality, I had been fortified by purpose, and now the time had come to show her exactly what that purpose could achieve. 3 weeks later, I stood in the grand marble entrance hall of my new estate, observing as the team of interior designers applied the final touches to what could only be described as a palace of potential. 15,000 square feet of classic Georgian architecture, with towering ceilings, magnificent crystal chandeliers, and enough room to accommodate a small army. The estate was situated on 5 acres in the most coveted neighborhood in the city, the very same neighborhood where Michael and Isabella resided, though their modest colonial home seemed almost like a cottage in comparison to my new residence. "The library is ready for your approval, Mr. Ashworth," called Margaret, the lead designer. I followed her into a space that had once been 3 separate rooms, now transformed into a breathtaking library with floor-to-ceiling mahogany bookshelves, rich Persian carpets, and plush reading chairs strategically placed near tall windows that offered a view of the expansive gardens. "It is perfect," I said, my hand gliding over the smooth surface of the large desk that would be my new command center. "And the guest wings? Both are fully appointed and ready for occupants. Each suite includes its own private sitting room, bedroom, and ensuite bathroom. Ideal for long-term stays." Long-term stays. That was precisely what I had envisioned. My phone vibrated with an incoming text from Eleanor Sterling. "Northwood Prep Board has unanimously approved your proposal. They would like to schedule a meeting with you next week to discuss the implementation details." Student selections will be finalized by the end of the month. I smiled as I typed my reply. Excellent. I have a particular interest in reviewing the applications of students whose last names begin with A. The meeting at Northwood Preparatory Academy was everything I had anticipated and more. The headmaster, Dr. William Peterson, was a man of distinction in his 60s who clearly appreciated the significance of a generous benefactor. "Mr. Ashworth," he said, rising as I was shown into his office, "we simply cannot express the depth of our gratitude for your benevolence. This endowment will fundamentally change our capacity to support our most gifted young minds. Education is the most critical investment one can make in the future," I responded, taking a seat in the leather chair opposite his desk. "I am particularly keen to mentor students who exhibit an entrepreneurial spirit." "Wonderful. We have already started the application review process, and I believe you will be thoroughly impressed by the quality of our students." He passed a stack of files across the desk to me. The top two bore the names I had been waiting to see: Leo Ashworth and Chloe Ashworth. I maintained a neutral expression as I opened Leo's file. Perfect grades in advanced physics and calculus, captain of the competitive robotics club, and an early acceptance to MIT. His personal statement expressed a desire to create technologies that address pressing real-world issues. Chloe's file was just as remarkable. Editor-in-chief of the literary journal, recipient of numerous poetry awards, and already had work published in several national youth literary magazines. Her essay eloquently described her ambition to use language to reveal essential truths and foster human connection. "These two students," I said, tapping their files, "they appear to be quite exceptional." "Oh, yes. Leo and Chloe Ashworth. They are certainly among our most brilliant. Though, I should add, they are also among our most reserved. They are polite, disciplined, and exemplary students, but they seem to keep themselves walled off. Chloe, in particular. She is a phenomenal talent, but she seems to carry a certain weight, a sadness. Leo is much the same, though he tends to conceal it behind his academic pursuits." I examined their photographs. Leo, with his intense dark eyes, and Chloe with her pensive artistic gaze. They looked like children who had learned at a young age that revealing any vulnerability was a liability. "I would like to extend an invitation for both of them to join the program," I stated, "along with perhaps half a dozen other students. An excellent selection. I will ensure they are notified at once." That evening, I sat in my new library, surrounded by the instruments of my patient retribution. I had tasked my assistant with creating comprehensive profiles on both twins, their hobbies, their accomplishments, their very limited and carefully managed social media presences, and, most crucially, their schedules of after-school activities. The next stage of my plan demanded flawless timing and meticulous execution. Isabella had invested 13 years in portraying me as the bitter, rejected grandfather. Now, it was my turn to show Leo and Chloe who I truly was: successful, generous, and deeply invested in their futures. My phone rang at 8:00 p.m. The number was not in my contacts, but when I answered, I heard a voice that made my heart leap. "Mr. Ashworth? This is Leo Ashworth from Northwood Prep," my grandson, calling me directly. "Leo," I said, keeping my voice warm yet professional. "What a pleasant surprise. What can I do for you? Dr. Peterson told me that you are the sponsor for the new Advanced Studies program, and that you might be willing to mentor some of us." "That is correct. I understand you have an interest in technology and engineering." "Yes, sir. I'm currently developing a project focused on sustainable energy systems for urban settings. Dr. Peterson suggested you might be able to offer some insights on the business side of things. The business side of things. My brilliant grandson wanted to learn how to transform his innovations into tangible impact. I would be delighted to discuss your project, Leo. Perhaps we could meet for coffee sometime this week? I am eager to hear more about your concepts. There was a brief pause, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his head as he considered his options. That would be fantastic. Though, I should probably check with my parents first. Of course. Why don't you have a conversation with them, and then let me know what day works best for your family? After we hung up, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. The first move had been made, and it had not been initiated by me. It had come from Leo himself. Isabella could hardly object to a meeting that was an official part of a school program, especially one that I was funding so magnanimously. 2 days later, Leo called back. My parents said it's fine for me to meet with you about the program, though my mom insisted that the meeting has to be during school hours and on school grounds. Isabella's stipulations. She was attempting to control the encounter while still permitting the meeting she could not logically prohibit. Of course, I said smoothly. Why don't we meet in the school library tomorrow afternoon? And Leo, please feel free to extend the invitation to your sister if she is interested. I believe she is also a participant in the program. The following afternoon, I arrived at Northwood Preparatory Academy, dressed in a sharp navy suit and wearing my late wife's favorite watch. I carried a leather portfolio filled with materials on entrepreneurship and innovation, but more importantly, I carried with me 13 years of love and longing to finally meet my grandchildren as the successful man I had become. I was seated at a table in the library when they arrived. Leo, tall and serious-looking, and Chloe, petite with long, dark hair and strikingly intelligent eyes. They approached my table with a shared hesitation, and for a fleeting moment I forgot to breathe. "Mr. Ashworth," Leo said quietly. "Please, call me Arthur," I replied, standing to shake both of their hands. "Thank you both for making the time to meet with me today." As we all sat down, I studied their faces, searching for traces of Michael as a boy, seeing echoes of my late wife's features, but above all, seeing two extraordinary young people who had grown up without me in their lives. Dr. Peterson mentioned your interest in the business applications of technology. I began, opening my portfolio and turning to Leo. "Tell me about your sustainable energy project." As Leo began to detail his ideas' complex, innovative, truly brilliant concepts, I noticed Chloe watching me intently, analyzing my every reaction, attempting to understand who this man was that their mother had kept them from. "And you, Chloe?" I said, turning to her after Leo had finished. "I understand you are a gifted writer. What genres are you most passionate about?" "Poetry, mostly," she answered softly, "and personal essays. I enjoy writing about real-life experiences, about truth. My literary granddaughter, drawn to the concept of truth in a family where falsehoods had defined her entire upbringing. "I would be honored to read some of your work sometime," I said. I have always held the belief that writing is one of the most powerful instruments for changing the world. For the very first time, Chloe smiled. It was a small, tentative smile, but its beauty was enough to break my heart. We talked for 2 hours, discussing their ambitions, their goals, and their aspirations for college and life beyond. They were both incredibly bright, but there was a palpable reservation in their manner, something that spoke of children who had learned to be sparing with their trust. As our meeting drew to a close, Chloe asked in a quiet voice, "Mr. Ashworth, why have we never met you before now?" The question hung in the silence like a dare. I could feel Leo watching me, awaiting my response. Sometimes, I said, choosing my words with great care, families endure difficult times. Adults make choices that impact everyone, and children often find themselves caught in the fallout. But I am here now, and it is my sincere hope that we can get to know one another better. It was not the complete truth, but it was a beginning. More truth than they had likely ever been told about me in 13 years. As I watched them walk away together, I felt something that had been dormant for over a decade, a potent mixture of hope and determination. The first seeds had been sown. Now, all I had to do was nurture their growth. Isabella's response to my involvement at the twins' school was both swift and utterly predictable. 2 days after my meeting with Leo and Chloe, she materialized at my new estate, unannounced. Her composure this time was significantly more frayed than during her previous visit. I was in the garden, overseeing the construction of a new greenhouse and an art studio additions I had specifically commissioned with my grandchildren in mind, when Thomas, my new head groundskeeper, informed me of her arrival. "There is a woman at the main gate, sir," he said. "She says her name is Isabella Ashworth, and that she must speak with you urgently." On the security monitor, I could see her pacing back and forth behind the wrought iron gates, her designer handbag clutched in her hand like a weapon, and her usually immaculate hair showing telltale signs of agitation. "Let her in, Thomas, and please ask Maria to prepare some tea in the sunroom." I took my time walking back to the house, allowing Isabella to stew in the grand marble foyer, while I changed out of my gardening attire and into something more suitable for a confrontation. A cream-colored cashmere sweater, charcoal wool trousers, and my favorite watch. It was the armor of a man who understood that appearing unperturbed was half the battle when dealing with an adversary. Isabella was scrutinizing the oil paintings in my foyer when I came down the grand staircase, her eyes performing the practiced appraisal of someone who had been raised to measure the world by its price tags. "Isabella," I said warmly. "What a delightful surprise. Please come join me in the sunroom. I've had tea brought in." The sunroom was my sanctuary in the new house. It featured floor-to-ceiling windows that provided an unobstructed view of the gardens, comfortable furniture arranged for quiet conversation, and fresh flowers from my greenhouse that filled the air with a sense of cultivated tranquility. "Your house is," Isabella began, then paused, visibly struggling to find a word that wouldn't betray her envy. "Quite impressive." "Thank you. I wanted to build a place where my family would always feel welcome." She winced at the word family, and I had to suppress a smile. "Arthur, I must speak with you about the twins." "Of course. They are truly remarkable young people. You must be very proud." "I am proud, which is precisely why I am concerned about this mentorship program you have involved them in." I poured tea into 2 delicate porcelain cups, deliberately taking my time with the ritual. "Concerned? I would have thought you would be pleased that they are being offered additional resources for their education, support from their grandfather, who has been conspicuously absent from their lives." There it was. The accusation veiled as concern, the narrative she had been spinning for 13 years, casting me as the villain. "Absent from their lives," I repeated, as if tasting the words. "That is an interesting choice of phrase, as if it were my decision to be absent. You know that is not what I meant, do I? Because from where I stand, I have made countless attempts to be a part of their lives, only to find my path obstructed at every opportunity." Isabella set her teacup down with a sharp clatter. "This is not about the past, Arthur. This is about what is in the best interest of Leo and Chloe right now. And you have decided that having a successful, loving grandfather in their lives is not in their best interest?" I have decided that confusing them with divided loyalties is not in their best interest. Divided loyalties. The phrase was a window into her soul, revealing that she viewed family not as a network of connections, but as a series of competitions. Isabella, tell me, are you afraid? Afraid that if Leo and Chloe spend time with me, they might begin to question the version of events they have been fed about my absence. Her face flushed a deep crimson. There is no version of events, Arthur. There are only facts. Facts? Like the fact that I have sent a birthday card every single year, only to have them returned, unopened? Or the fact that I have tried to call on holidays only to discover my number has been blocked? Or perhaps the fact that I have been steadily contributing to a college fund for both children, a fund that you have been accessing without their knowledge? She turned pale. How do you know about? I know about a great many things, Isabella, including the fact that Michael's graphic design agency has been foundering for the past 3 years, and that you have been using my contributions to prop up a lifestyle you can no longer afford. You have no right. I have every right to know how my money is being used, especially when it is intended for the future of my grandchildren. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where I envisioned Leo and Chloe might one day walk with me. Let me tell you what I believe is truly happening, I continued, my back still to her. You are beginning to realize that the financial safety net you've been relying on is unraveling. Michael's business is not going to recover. Your own career aspirations never came to fruition, and you are now confronted with the terrifying prospect of having to actually earn a living instead of coasting on my generosity. That's not. And now, you learn that not only have I sold my company for a handsome sum of $15 million, but I am also actively forging a relationship with the very children you have kept from me. Children who are on the cusp of adulthood and will soon be making their own choices about who they want in their lives. I turned back to face her and saw the raw, undisguised fear in her eyes. You are terrified that they might just choose me. Isabella shot to her feet. I am their mother. I raised them. I was the one there for every scraped knee, every school performance, every teenage heartbreak. Yes, you were, I said, my calm tone seemingly taking the wind out of her sails. And for that, I am truly grateful. You are? Of course. You have done a commendable job in raising them. They are brilliant, accomplished, and well-mannered young adults. But Isabella, being their mother, does not grant you the right to be their only family. It does, when that family is toxic. Toxic? I let out a soft laugh. Is that the word you've used to describe me to them? That I am toxic? She had the decency to look momentarily ashamed. I have protected them from unnecessary confusion and pain by lying to them about who I am and why I have not been a part of their lives. I have never lied to them, haven't you? What precisely have you told them about me, Isabella? She was silent for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, calculating how much of the truth she could afford to reveal. I told them that you disapproved of me from the very beginning, that you tried to break Michael and me apart, that when we decided to move away to give our family a fresh start, you chose to sever ties with us, rather than respect our decision. I see. And the birthday cards, the phone calls, the college fund? I assume they are unaware of those things. Of course they are, because those facts would disrupt the tidy narrative you have so carefully constructed. I returned to my chair and sat down, pouring myself another cup of tea. Isabella, allow me to be perfectly clear. I am not going anywhere. I will not simply fade away while you continue to isolate my grandchildren from me. They are 17 years old. They are old enough to form their own judgments about relationships. They are old enough to be told the truth about their family's history. What are you proposing? I am proposing that you can either cooperate with me in gradually fostering a healthy relationship with Leo and Chloe, or you can persist in this fight and run the risk of them discovering the truth on their own. What truth? The truth that their grandfather has loved them fiercely for 13 years. The truth that he built an empire in part with the hope of one day being able to provide for them. The truth that he has never, for a single moment, stopped trying to be a part of their lives, despite being systematically shut out. Isabella sank back into her chair, suddenly appearing smaller, more vulnerable. "They love me," she whispered. "I'm their mother." "Yes, you are. And nothing I do will ever alter that fact. But it is possible for them to love us both, Isabella. Love is not a finite resource. You want them to choose you over me." "No," I said firmly. "I want them to understand that they do not have to choose at all." But even as I spoke the words, I knew they weren't entirely true. Because if Isabella continued to fight me, if she persisted in her attempts to poison my relationship with my grandchildren, then yes, I would force them to choose. And I would do everything in my power to ensure they chose correctly. The shift in Leo and Chloe was subtle at first, but for someone who had been observing them as closely as I had, it was unmistakable. In the weeks that followed, they began to contact me independently. Leo would call with questions about business strategies for his projects, and Chloe would email me drafts of her writing, seeking feedback. I was diligent in maintaining professional boundaries, always arranging to meet them at the school or in other public venues, and I made sure to keep Isabella informed of all our interactions. Yet, with every conversation, I could sense their curiosity about the man they had been forbidden to know growing stronger. "Mr. Ashworth," Chloe said one afternoon as we sat in the Northwood Prep Library, "may I ask you a personal question?" I set down the collection of her poems I had been reviewing. They were exceptional pieces, filled with an insight and emotional maturity that seemed to belong to someone far older than 17. "Of course. Why did you really start your manufacturing company?" I studied her face, noting the genuine curiosity that had replaced the polite deference of our earlier meetings. "That is a complex question, with a rather simple answer," I said. "I started it because I had no other choice. I had to survive." "What do you mean?" "When your grandmother passed away, she left behind more debts than assets. I was faced with a choice. I could either accept the charity of others and live a modest life, or I could build something of my own that would guarantee I would never again have to rely on anyone else." "So you chose to be independent." "I chose to be powerful. There is a distinction." She leaned forward, her interest piqued. "What kind of distinction?" "Independence means you are capable of taking care of yourself. Power means you are capable of taking care of the people you love, regardless of whether they want you to or not." I watched as she absorbed this concept, her writer's mind carefully filing away the nuance. "Is that what you are doing now? Taking care of people, whether they want you to or not?" A clever girl. Perhaps too clever for her own good. "What do you think I'm doing?" "I think you are trying to build a relationship with Leo and me, even though Mom doesn't want you to. And how does that make you feel?" Chloe was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the courtyard outside the library window, where other students were laughing and socializing with the carefree abandon of teenagers who had never had to navigate familial battlefields. "Confused?" she said at last. "Mom always told us that you weren't interested in being a grandfather, that you chose your career over your family. And what is your opinion now?" "I think that if a man builds a 15 million company and then sells it so he can spend his time mentoring teenagers, it is highly unlikely that he chose his career over his family. It is more likely that he chose his career for his family." I felt a surge of pride and affection for this insightful young woman, who had inherited not only my late wife's eyes, but also her uncanny ability to see past people's exteriors to their true character. "You are very perceptive for a 17-year-old, I said softly. "I've had to be. Our family is not one that encourages asking questions." That single sentence told me more about her home life than months of observation ever could have. In a family where curiosity was discouraged, children had to learn to find their own answers. And sometimes, those answers were not the ones their parents had intended for them to find. "Chloe, may I tell you something about your father that he probably doesn't even remember?" She nodded. "When he was about your age, he went through a period where he questioned everything. My rules, my expectations, my decisions. It was incredibly frustrating for me at the time, but in retrospect, I realize that was the moment he truly began to become his own person. What happened? I learned that I had to trust him to make his own sound judgments, even if they weren't the judgments I would have made for him. And did he make sound judgments? I thought about Michael's decision to marry Isabella, about the 13 years of estrangement, about the grandchildren I had missed watching grow into young adults. Some of them, I said carefully. But even the ones I disagreed with taught him invaluable lessons about consequences and personal responsibility. Later that afternoon, Leo joined us for what had become our regular weekly mentoring session. He arrived with a thick binder of research, looking more animated and engaged than I had seen him since our very first meeting. "I've been developing the business plan you suggested," he said, spreading his papers across the library table, "for turning my sustainable energy project into a viable company." As he guided me through his financial projections, his market research, and his strategy for scaling up production, I felt an immense sense of pride in this brilliant young man. He had inherited his grandfather's analytical mind and his father's creative ingenuity. "This is exceptional work, Leo," I said when he had finished. "Have you shared this with your parents?" His enthusiasm waned slightly. "I tried to discuss it with Dad, but he's been under a lot of stress with his own business lately. And Mom." He glanced over at Chloe, who offered him a small, encouraging nod. "Mom thinks I should be concentrating on my applications to MIT instead of getting sidetracked by entrepreneurial fantasies." Entrepreneurial fantasies. Isabella's dismissive choice of words revealed her complete lack of understanding when it came to ambition and innovation. "And what do you think?" I asked. "Do you believe your ideas are fantasies?" "I think they are possibilities," he said with conviction. "And I think that if I don't at least try to make them a reality, I will spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been." "Then you must try. The worst-case scenario is that you will learn some very valuable lessons about business and technology. The best-case scenario is that you will change the world." Chloe smiled at her brother. "See? I told you Grandfather would understand." Grandfather. Not Mr. Ashworth or Arthur, but grandfather. The word hung in the air between us like a precious gift, and I felt my eyes begin to well up. "Is that okay?" Chloe asked quickly, noticing my emotional reaction. "To call you grandfather? I mean, if it's going to make things awkward with Mom, it makes me happier than you could ever possibly imagine," I said softly. "And Chloe, you do not need anyone's permission to acknowledge your own family." That evening, as I was in my library reviewing investment strategies, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed Michael's name, the first time he had called me directly in more than 2 years. "Hello, Michael." "Dad." His voice was strained, tight with suppressed anger. "We need to talk." "Of course. Would you like to come to the house?" "I am not setting foot in that house. Meet me at Meridian Coffee tomorrow, noon." He hung up before I could reply, but I was smiling. Isabella had clearly informed him about the twins calling me grandfather, and he was incensed enough to break his own long-standing rule of non-communication. Perfect. The next day, I arrived at Meridian Coffee 15 minutes early, and chose a quiet corner table that would afford us some privacy. Michael arrived precisely on time. He looked older than his 39 years, carrying the weary burden of a man who had been making compromises for far too long. He had inherited his father's height and dark hair, but there was a diminished quality about him that had not been present in his 20s. The confident, ambitious young man who had once dreamed of being a celebrated graphic designer had been replaced by someone who looked perpetually exhausted and vaguely defeated. "Dad," he said, sitting down across from me without any preamble, "you need to back off. Hello to you as well, Michael. You're looking well." "Don't," he said, his voice sharp. "Don't act like this is some casual social visit. Isabella told me what you said to her, and I am telling you now, stay away from my children." "Your children? When did they become exclusively yours?" "They have always been mine and Isabella's. You gave up any claim to them when you decided to cut us out of your life." I stared at him across the small table, this man I had raised and loved, and then lost to the influence of another. "Is that truly how you remember it, Michael? That it was my choice to cut you out?" "I know what happened. I was there." "You were there for Isabella's version of what happened. But since you've come all this way, why don't you tell me your recollection of events?" "I remember you disapproving of Isabella from the moment I introduced her to you." "I was concerned about some of her behaviors. Yes, you tried to break us up. I suggested that you might want to take a bit more time to get to know one another before making a lifelong commitment. You refused to accept our relationship. I refused to pretend that I believed it was a healthy relationship when she was systematically isolating you from your friends and family." Michael's jaw clenched. "She never isolated me from anyone." "Really? When was the last time you spoke with your college roommate, David? Or your cousin, Mark? Or any of the friends you had before you met Isabella?" He remained silent, but I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "When was the last time you made a significant decision without first asking for Isabella's permission? When was the last time you pursued a personal interest that she did not also share?" Marriage is about compromise. Marriage is about partnership, Michael. Compromise implies that both individuals make sacrifices for the good of the relationship. What exactly has Isabella sacrificed for you? Again, there was only silence. "Let me tell you what I see," I said, leaning forward. "I see a brilliant, creative man who has spent the last 15 years making himself progressively smaller in order to fit into someone else's idea of who he should be. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Your graphic design business is on the brink of failure because you have been trying to run it according to Isabella's notions of what constitutes respectable work instead of pursuing your own creative instincts." His face went pale. "How do you know about my business?" "I know because I care about you, Michael. I have always cared about you. Even when you were convinced that I was the enemy. You are the enemy. You are trying to turn my own children against their mother. I am trying to give my grandchildren the opportunity to know their grandfather. The same opportunity you had with your own grandparents, who loved you unconditionally and helped mold you into the fine man you were before you forgot who you are." Michael stood up abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor of the coffee shop. "Stay away from Leo and Chloe, Dad. I'm serious." "Or what, Michael? You'll sever all communication with me? You'll prevent the twins from seeing me? You'll erase me from their lives?" I stood up as well, meeting his intensity with my own quiet resolve. "You've already tried all of those things, and yet, here we are. Your children sought me out, Michael. They came to me because they were curious about the grandfather they had never been permitted to know. They are confused. They are intelligent. There is a difference. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a business card, my new personal card with the address and phone number of my estate. When you are ready to have an honest conversation about what is truly best for Leo and Chloe, not what is convenient for Isabella, or what serves to protect the lies she has told, you can call me. I placed the card on the table and walked away, leaving him standing there, engulfed in his anger, his confusion, and the dawning awareness that his children were beginning to see through the carefully fabricated story he had helped to create. That evening, Chloe called my personal cell phone. "Grandfather, Dad told us we can't meet with you anymore. He says it's confusing for us and that it's hurting Mom's feelings." "And how do you feel about that, sweetheart?" "I feel like I'm being treated like a child who is incapable of making her own decisions about who she wants to have in her life. And Leo, he's furious. He says Dad is acting like we're too simple-minded to understand family dynamics, and that maybe there is a reason Mom doesn't want us to know you. Smart children. Too smart to be deceived by falsehoods for much longer." "What would you like to do?" I asked. "We want to continue seeing you, but we don't want to make things more difficult at home." "Then don't make things more difficult at home. But remember, Chloe, you are both nearly 18. Very soon, you will be making all of your own decisions about every aspect of your lives, including your family relationships. Are you suggesting that we should just wait until we're legal adults?" "I am suggesting that the truth has a way of coming to light, no matter who tries to conceal it. And I am also suggesting that I love you both enough to be patient while that process unfolds." After we hung up, I sat in my library, surrounded by the instruments of my patient retribution, and I realized that the most critical phase was about to commence. Isabella had miscalculated by attempting to sever my access to the twins. Michael had exposed his own weakness by delivering ultimatums he had no power to enforce. And Leo and Chloe had made it clear that they were ready to start making their own choices about where their loyalties should lie. The war for the hearts of my grandchildren was entering its final stage, and I was fully prepared to win. 2 weeks went by with no further contact from Leo or Chloe. I respected their choice to not exacerbate the situation at home, but I utilized the time to my advantage, gathering more information and preparing for what I was certain would be the next move in Isabella's campaign against me. My private investigator, a highly discreet woman named Jennifer Walsh, provided me with updates that confirmed my suspicions. Michael's graphic design business was indeed on the verge of collapse, not from a lack of talent on his part, but from a series of poor business decisions driven by Isabella's insistence that he cater to high-status, low-profit clients. "The business is 3 months behind on their office rent," Jennifer informed me during our meeting in my study. "They have lost 2 of their major clients in the last 6 months, and Isabella has been pressuring him to seek employment at a corporate marketing agency instead of trying to salvage his own company. Financially, they are subsisting on credit cards and what remains of the college fund you set up for the twins. Isabella has been making regular withdrawals, claiming they are for educational-related expenses, but the funds have been used to maintain their lifestyle." A cold fury settled deep in my chest. Not only had Isabella kept me from my grandchildren, but she had also been pilfering their future to finance her present comforts. And the twins? How are they coping with the new restrictions on seeing me? From what I have been able to gather, not well. Leo has become increasingly withdrawn, spending most of his free time in the school's engineering workshop. Chloe has been staying late at the library, supposedly to work on college applications, but it seems she is mostly just trying to avoid being at home. My poor grandchildren, trapped in the crossfire of a war they did not fully comprehend, bearing the consequences of choices that adults had made long before they were old enough to have a say in their own family's dynamics. That afternoon, I made a decision that I knew would accelerate the entire situation. I called Dr. W. Peterson at Northwood Preparatory Academy. Dr. Peterson, this is Arthur Ashworth. I wanted to follow up on the mentorship program and discuss some potential new opportunities for our participants. Of course, Mr. Ashworth. The program has been a resounding success. The students are producing some truly exceptional work. I am particularly impressed with Leo Ashworth's entrepreneurial project. I would like to discuss the possibility of providing additional funding to help him develop a working prototype of his sustainable energy system. That is extremely generous. I am sure Leo would be overjoyed. There is one condition. I would like to present this opportunity to him in a more formal setting, perhaps at a ceremony where his parents could also be in attendance, to witness their son being honored for his accomplishments. I could almost hear Dr. Peterson smile over the phone. He understood precisely what I was doing, creating a scenario in which Michael and Isabella would be forced to publicly recognize my positive and supportive relationship with their son. I believe we could certainly organize something of that nature. Perhaps a special awards ceremony for all the participants in the program. Perfect. And Dr. Peterson, I would also like to make another donation to the school, something substantial, which would necessitate a formal announcement and perhaps some local media attention. What did you have in mind? A new science and technology wing, complete with state-of-the-art laboratories, research spaces, and a scholarship fund for students who wish to pursue careers in STEM fields. The silence on the other end of the line confirmed that I had chosen the perfect amount, large enough to be newsworthy, and significant enough to demand public acknowledgement. Mr. Ashworth, that is an extraordinary gift. The board would have to vote on it, of course, but I cannot fathom them refusing. Of course. And I would want the official announcement to specifically state that the donation was inspired by the innovative work of my grandson, Leo Ashworth, in the field of sustainable technology. After I ended the call, I leaned back in my chair with a profound sense of satisfaction. Isabella had made the critical error of trying to control the flow of information, but information, much like water, always finds a way to bypass obstacles. Within a week, the local newspaper featured a front-page story about my donation to Northwood Preparatory Academy. The headline read, "Local businessman donates $2 million for new science wing," with a sub-headline that mentioned, "Inspired by grandson's innovation." The article included quotes from Dr. Peterson, who praised both my generosity and Leo's exceptional talent, along with a photograph of Leo in the school's engineering lab. But most importantly, it contained my first public statement about my relationship with my grandchildren in over 13 years. "I am incredibly proud of Leo and his sister Chloe," the quote read. "They represent the very best of the next generation, brilliant, creative, and dedicated to making the world a better place. This donation is my way of investing in their future and the futures of all students like them." I was in my garden that evening when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Michael's name. "Dad." His voice was strained. "We need to talk. I mean, really talk. Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? Somewhere private." "Of course. Would you like to come here?" There was a long pause. "Yes, but not Isabella. Just me." "Just you," I agreed. The following evening, Michael stood in my foyer, looking around with the wide-eyed awe of someone who was witnessing true wealth, unapologetically displayed, for the first time. The marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, and the collection of original art all spoke of money that had been spent not just on comfort, but on creating an environment that reflected the success that had earned it. "My God, Dad," he said softly, "this place is incredible. Thank you." Would you care for a tour before we talk? I guided him through the main rooms of the house. The library with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and cozy reading areas. The formal dining room that could comfortably seat 20 guests. The sunroom with its panoramic view of the gardens. But I saved the best for last. This is the guest wing, I said, opening the door to a beautifully appointed suite, complete with its own sitting room, bedroom, and private bathroom. I had it designed with Leo and Chloe in mind, for when they come to visit. Dad, his voice cracked slightly. And this, I continued, leading him to the adjacent room, is the art studio I had built for Chloe. It has perfect natural light, professional-grade easels, and a writing desk by the window for when she needs a quiet space to work on her poetry. Michael stood in the center of the studio, his eyes taking in the carefully selected furnishings, the inspirational artwork on the walls, and the built-in bookcases filled with volumes on art, literature, and creative writing. You built all of this for her, he said. It was not a question. I built this entire house for them, Michael. Every room, every feature, every single detail was planned with Leo and Chloe in my thoughts. They don't even know you. No, but I know them. I have known them from a distance for 13 years, and I have spent every single day of those years hoping that one day I would have the opportunity to show them just how much they mean to me. We retired to my library, where I poured 2 glasses of wine, and we sat in chairs facing each other across a small table. Michael, why are you here? He took a long sip of his wine before he answered. Because I read that newspaper article, and I realized that my own father has been more involved in my children's lives than I have. I reached across the table and placed my hand on his, the first physical contact we had shared in years. It's not too late, Michael, isn't it? They're almost 18. They'll be leaving for college in a year. I have missed their entire childhood because I was too much of a coward to stand up to Isabella. You haven't missed their future. And Michael, they need their father to start being their father again, not just Isabella's husband who happens to reside in the same house. He squeezed my hand, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the little boy he had once been, before the world had taught him that keeping the peace was more important than fighting for what truly mattered. What do I do, Dad? How do I fix this? You start by making one decision, just one, based solely on what you believe is best for Leo and Chloe, regardless of what Isabella may think. And if she fights you, then you fight back. Because, Michael, some things are worth fighting for, and your children's happiness is one of them. That night, long after Michael had left, I sat in my library, feeling a glimmer of hope that I hadn't experienced in over a decade. Hope that my fractured family might actually be reparable. But I also knew, with absolute certainty, that Isabella would not surrender without one last desperate battle. And I was ready for war. The confrontation I had been anticipating arrived even sooner than I had expected. 3 days after my conversation with Michael, I received a call from Dr. Peterson that confirmed Isabella had chosen to escalate the conflict. Mr. Ashworth, he said, his voice tense with professional unease. I'm afraid we have a situation concerning the mentorship program. What kind of situation? Mrs. Isabella Ashworth paid me a visit this morning. She is demanding that Leo and Chloe be removed from the program, effective immediately. My jaw tightened. On what grounds? She alleges that your involvement constitutes harassment of her family, and that you are using the program to manipulate her children against their parents. And how did you respond? I informed her that participation in the program is entirely voluntary, that both students are performing exceptionally well, and that any family disagreements should be handled outside of the school. But she is threatening to withdraw both children from Northwood Preparatory Academy altogether if we do not acquiesce to her demands. Isabella was making her final desperate move, using the twins' education as a bargaining chip. It was precisely the kind of reckless tactic I had expected from someone who felt their control slipping away. Dr. Peterson, let me ask you a question. Have Leo or Chloe expressed any wish to withdraw from the program? Quite the contrary. Just yesterday, Leo asked me when he could schedule his next meeting with you to discuss the funding for his prototype. And Chloe submitted a beautiful essay about finding her voice as a writer, in which she specifically credited your mentorship as a key inspiration. Then, I suggest you inform Mrs. Ashworth that her children are old enough to make their own choices regarding their educational pursuits. I have attempted that approach. She is quite adamant. What exactly is she threatening? Legal action against the school for permitting what she describes as inappropriate interference in family matters. She is also threatening to file a formal grievance with the State Board of Education. I smiled grimly. Isabella was overplaying her hand, and overreaching is always a fatal mistake. Dr. Peterson, I want you to know that if Mrs. Ashworth proceeds with any of those threats, my legal team will provide the school with our full and unwavering support. You have done nothing improper, and I will not permit you to be penalized for providing educational opportunities to deserving students. I appreciate that, Mr. Ashworth. But my primary concern is for Leo and Chloe being caught in the middle of this, as am I. Which is why I believe it is time for them to understand exactly what it is they are caught in the middle of. That evening, I did something I had never done before. I called Leo and Chloe directly at their home, fully aware that Isabella would likely be the one to answer. The phone rang 3 times before Isabella's voice, sharp with suspicion, answered, "Ashworth residence. Isabella, this is Arthur. I would like to speak with Leo and Chloe, please. They are not available. Are they not at home? Or are you simply not permitting them to speak with me? They are occupied with their homework. Then I will wait." Arthur, Isabella, put Leo on the phone. Now. Perhaps it was the tone of absolute authority I had honed in countless boardroom negotiations. Or perhaps Isabella finally realized that she was engaged in a battle she could not win through intimidation alone. But after a moment of tense silence, I heard her call out, "Leo, it's for you." "Hello?" Leo's voice was cautious. "Leo, it's your grandfather. I need to speak with both you and Chloe. Can you please put me on speakerphone?" "Hold on." I heard some shuffling, and then Chloe's voice said, "Hi, grandfather." "Hello, sweetheart. I am calling because I have been informed that your mother has requested that the school remove both of you from the mentorship program." "She did what?" Leo's voice was filled with indignation. "She went to see Dr. Peterson today and demanded that you be withdrawn from the program immediately." "She can't do that," Chloe said, her voice equally incensed. "That program is the best thing that has happened to us all year." "Actually, she can. As you are both still minors, she retains the legal authority to make educational decisions on your behalf." "That's not fair," Leo said. "We're 17. We should be able to choose our own academic opportunities." "You are absolutely right. Which is why I am calling. I am going to provide you with some information that you will need to make informed decisions about your own futures." "What kind of information?" Chloe asked. I took a deep breath, knowing that what I was about to do would permanently alter their relationship with their mother. "I am going to tell you the truth about why I have not been a part of your lives for the past 13 years. "Grandfather," Leo said quietly, "are you sure you want to do this over the phone?" "I am sure, because tomorrow Your mother may succeed in cutting off all communication between us, and you deserve to hear this from me directly, rather than piecing it together on your own years from now." For the next 30 minutes, I told them everything. The returned birthday gifts, the blocked phone numbers, the college fund that Isabella had been secretly depleting, my numerous attempts to visit that had always been denied, and most importantly, the web of lies they had been told about my reasons for being absent from their lives. "You mean," Chloe said, her voice small and filled with hurt, "you've been trying to contact us this entire time? Every birthday, every Christmas, every major holiday for 13 years. And Mom has been hiding your letters and gifts?" Leo asked. "Yes. Why?" The pain in Chloe's voice was palpable. "Why would she do that?" "Because she was afraid. Afraid that if you got to know me, you might come to love me. And she was afraid that if you loved me, there wouldn't be enough love left over for her." "But that makes no sense," Leo said. "Love isn't finite. You can love many people without loving any of them any less." A smart boy, he understood a concept his mother had never been able to grasp. "You are absolutely right, Leo. But some people do not see it that way. Some people view love as a competition rather than a gift." "What about Dad?" Chloe asked. "Does he know what Mom has been doing? Your father made a choice 13 years ago to prioritize keeping the peace in his marriage over fighting for my relationship with you. He has recently begun to regret that choice." "How do you know?" "Because we had dinner together 3 nights ago. He came to my house, saw the rooms I have built for you, and he realized what he has allowed you to miss out on." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I could hear them whispering to each other. "Grandfather," Leo said finally, "we want to come and see your house. We want to see the rooms you built for us." "I would love that more than anything. But you will need to discuss it with your parents first." "What if they say no?" Chloe asked. "Then you will have to decide for yourselves how important it is to you to make your own choices about your family relationships." "What do you mean?" "I mean that in less than a year, you will both be 18 years old. You will be legal adults, free to decide for yourselves who you want to have relationships with and how you wish to spend your time." "Are you telling us we should wait until we're 18? Leo asked. "I am telling you that sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is to trust their children to make sound decisions, even when those decisions are not the ones the parents would have chosen for them." After we hung up, I sat in my library, fully aware that I had just crossed a point of no return. I had given Leo and Chloe information that would fundamentally reshape their understanding of their family, their childhood, and their mother. Isabella would never forgive me for it. But more significantly, Leo and Chloe would never forgive Isabella for the lies that they now recognized as such. The next morning, I was in my garden when Thomas informed me that I had visitors at the gate. On the security monitor, I saw Leo and Chloe standing next to a car I didn't recognize. It was not Michael's sedan or Isabella's SUV. "Let them in," I said, my heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and concern. "And Thomas, please ensure the gates are securely closed behind them." As they walked up the circular driveway towards my front door, I could see the resolve in their posture. These were not children sneaking behind their parents' backs. These were young adults making a deliberate choice about their own lives. "Grandfather," Chloe said as I opened the door, "we borrowed our neighbor's car. Mom and Dad think we're at the library. Are you certain you want to be here? This will undoubtedly escalate the conflict at home." "We're certain," Leo said firmly. "We were up all night talking about it. We are tired of being treated like children who are incapable of handling the truth about our own family." I pulled them both into a hug, the first time I had held my grandchildren in 13 years, and I felt something deep inside my chest, something I had kept carefully locked away for more than a decade, finally break free. "Welcome home," I whispered into Chloe's hair, which smelled of vanilla and youthful dreams. "Home?" she asked, pulling back to look at me. "This house was built for you," I said simply. "For both of you. Every room, every detail, every comfort was chosen with the hope that one day you would want to be here." For the next 3 hours, I gave them the tour I had been dreaming of for years. Leo was amazed by the library, with its extensive collection of technical manuals and comfortable reading areas. Chloe wept when she saw the art studio, with its perfect northern light and inspirational quotes painted on the walls. But it was in my study, surrounded by the evidence of my business success and the meticulous documentation of their own achievements, that they truly began to grasp what had been kept from them. "You have newspaper clippings of every award we've ever won," Leo said, his voice filled with awe as he looked through the scrapbooks I had maintained from a distance. "You have copies of poems I published in literary journals that I didn't even know you had seen," Chloe added, her tone full of wonder. "I have been watching you both grow up from afar," I said, "celebrating your triumphs, worrying about your struggles, and loving you both every single day for 13 years. "Why didn't you fight harder to see us?" Leo asked. It was not an accusation, but a genuine question. "Because I was afraid that if I pushed too hard, your parents would simply move even farther away. I was afraid that fighting for you would ultimately result in losing you entirely. And now? Now, you are old enough to understand the difference between fighting for someone and fighting with someone. And I am old enough to know that some things are worth the risk." We were sitting in my sunroom, sharing tea and the stories we had never been able to share, when my security system alerted me to a car at the front gate. Through the monitor, I saw Michael's sedan, with both him and Isabella inside, their expressions grim and determined. "Your parents are here?" I told the twins. "We know," Chloe said. "We figured they would find out where we were eventually." We left them a note. "What kind of note?" "We told them that we were visiting our grandfather and that we would be home in time for dinner," Leo said. "We also told them that we wanted to have a family meeting tonight to discuss some things we have recently learned about our family's history." Smart children. They were not hiding their choices or sneaking around. They were being direct about their decisions and their expectations. "Are you ready for what comes next?" I asked. "We're ready," Chloe said firmly. "We are tired of living in a family where the truth is considered optional." I pressed the button to open the gates and watched through the window as Michael and Isabella walked up my driveway like soldiers approaching enemy territory. The war for my grandchildren was about to reach its climax, and for the first time in 13 years, I had them by my side as the battle began. Isabella burst into my home like a tempest in designer clothes, her perfectly coiffed hair and flawless makeup failing to conceal the fury that radiated from her. "Leo, Chloe," she called out before she was even fully through the doorway. "We are leaving. Now." "No," Chloe said calmly from her seat beside me in the sunroom. "We're not." Isabella stopped in her tracks, clearly taken aback by this direct defiance. Behind her, Michael appeared torn between his wife's rage and a genuine curiosity about his children's decision. "What did you just say to me?" Isabella's voice was rising to a dangerous pitch. "I said we are not leaving," Chloe repeated. "Michael," Isabella pleaded, her voice cracking with panic. "You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious," he replied. "For 17 years, I have made decisions about our children based on what you believed was best. Perhaps it is time I started listening to what they believe is best." Leo and Chloe exchanged a look of astonished hope, clearly not having anticipated this support from their father. "Dad," Leo said carefully, "we know this is complicated. We know there's a history between you and grandfather that we don't fully understand. But," Chloe continued, "we are old enough to make our own decisions about who we want to have relationships with." Isabella looked back and forth between her husband and her children, realizing with dawning horror that her usual methods of control were failing. "Fine," she said, her voice shifting to the manipulative sweetness I remembered from her early visits to my penthouse. "Let's all sit down and discuss this like rational adults." She started towards the sunroom, as if she owned the place, clearly intending to seize control of the conversation. But I had no intention of letting that happen. "Isabella," I said calmly, "I don't recall inviting you to sit down." She stopped mid-stride. "Excuse me? This is my home. Leo and Chloe are here as my invited guests. You and Michael are here as... what, exactly?" "We are here as their parents." "Are you?" Because parents who respected their children might have called to arrange a visit, rather than showing up unannounced and demanding that their nearly adult children leave a place they have chosen to be. Michael cleared his throat. "Dad, we came because we were worried. The twins left a note saying they were coming to see you, but they've never been here before, because Isabella has never allowed them to be invited before. But you are right to be concerned for their safety. Would you like a tour of the house so you can see for yourselves the environment your children are in?" It was a masterstroke. By framing the situation as one of parental concern rather than a confrontation, I was forcing them to either accept my hospitality or expose their true motives. "That would be nice," Michael said, ignoring the sharp glare from Isabella. For the next 30 minutes, I led them through my mansion, following the same path I had taken with the twins, but with a decidedly different narrative. Where I had shown Leo and Chloe rooms designed for their comfort and happiness, I showed Michael and Isabella evidence of my success, my independence, and my capacity to provide for my grandchildren in ways they never could. "This is the guest wing," I said, opening the doors to the beautifully appointed suites. "Leo and Chloe are welcome here anytime, for study sessions, creative projects, or simply when they need a quiet space to think." "It's beautiful, Dad," Michael said genuinely. "But they have rooms at home, do they? Or do they have rooms in Isabella's house, where they are permitted to exist only according to her rules and preferences?" Isabella's jaw tightened. "They have loving homes where their parents..." "Their parents," I interrupted, "one of whom has been lying to them about their grandfather for 13 years. I was protecting them from confusion and pain. You were protecting yourself from competition." The words hung in the air between us, like a challenge. This was the moment I had been building towards for months, the moment when Isabella's carefully crafted narrative would finally collapse under the weight of the undeniable truth. "That is not true," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? Let's examine this protection of yours, Isabella. You protected them from birthday cards that wished them happiness. You protected them from Christmas gifts that were chosen with love. You protected them from a grandfather who wanted nothing more than to celebrate their achievements and support their dreams. I protected them from someone who tried to break up their parents' marriage. I tried to protect my son from someone who was systematically isolating him from everyone who loved him. There is a difference." Chloe stepped forward, her young voice cutting through the adult tension with surprising force. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Isabella turned to her daughter with a look of desperate hope. "Of course, sweetheart. Why did you never tell us that grandfather was trying to contact us?" "Because I knew it would confuse you." "That is not an answer," Leo interjected. "Why didn't you let us decide for ourselves whether or not we wanted to be confused?" The question was so direct, so mature, that Isabella seemed momentarily stunned. "Because you were children," We have been children for 17 years, Leo said quietly. At what point were you planning to start trusting us to handle complex family relationships? When you were old enough to understand. We are old enough now, Chloe interrupted. We are old enough to understand that you have been making choices for us that perhaps we should have been a part of. Isabella looked around the room, desperately seeking an ally. But Michael was staring at his children with an expression that was a mixture of pride and profound regret. Michael, she pleaded, tell them they don't understand the full situation. What part don't they understand? He asked quietly. They don't understand how manipulative he can be, how he uses his money and guilt to control people. Like you've been using our dependence on you to control us? Leo asked. The question was devastating in its simplicity. Isabella stared at her son as if he had physically struck her. I have never controlled you. I have guided you. I have protected you. You have made every major decision about our lives without ever once asking what we wanted, Chloe said. Where we lived, which schools we attended, which activities we were allowed to participate in, who our friends could be, and apparently, which family members we were allowed to know. I did what I thought was best. For whom? Leo asked. Best for us or best for you? The silence that followed was deafening. Isabella looked around the room, at her children who were now questioning her authority, at her husband who was failing to support her, and at me, sitting calmly in my chair like a king holding court in his own castle. This is all your fault, she said, turning on me with a renewed fury. You have poisoned them against me. You have turned my own children into strangers. I have told them the truth, Isabella. If the truth has turned them against you, then perhaps the problem is not with the truth itself. The truth? The truth is that you are a bitter old man who cannot stand the fact that your son chose someone else over you. Is that what you believe this is about? A competition for Michael's affection? I know that's what this is about. I stood up slowly, with the deliberate grace I had perfected in boardrooms. Isabella, you are absolutely correct that this is about a competition, but you have completely misunderstood who the competitors are. I am not competing with you for Michael's love. I am competing with you for my grandchildren's respect. And after 17 years of lying to them, controlling them, and treating them like possessions rather than people, I am winning. The color drained from her face as she finally grasped what had been happening. You planned this? She whispered. All of it. The mentorship program, the donations, the meetings with the twins. You planned all of it. I plan to give my grandchildren the opportunity to know me as I truly am, rather than as the caricature you have portrayed me as. If that has threatened your relationship with them, then perhaps you should examine why the truth is so dangerous to your version of a family. Isabella looked at Leo and Chloe with an expression of near desperation. Please, she said, her voice breaking. I love you both so much. Everything I have ever done has been because I love you. We know you love us, Mom, Chloe said gently. But love does not justify lies, and love does not require us to choose between you and grandfather, Leo added. We should be able to love both of you. But if we are forced to choose, Chloe said quietly, we need you to understand that we will choose truth over comfort. We will choose the relationships that treat us like intelligent people, capable of making our own decisions. Isabella stared at her daughter, this poised, articulate young woman who had just delivered an ultimatum with devastating kindness. What are you saying? We are saying that we want grandfather in our lives, Leo said. We want to know him, to spend time with him, and to build the relationship we should have had all along. And if you cannot accept that, Chloe continued, then you are the one who will have to decide whether your need to control us is more important than your love for us. As I watched Isabella come to the realization that she was losing the war she had started 13 years ago, I felt not a sense of triumph, but a profound sadness for the damage that had been inflicted upon everyone involved. The twins were right. They should never have been forced to choose between their mother and their grandfather. But Isabella had made that choice inevitable by refusing to share them, by lying about me, and by treating their love like a finite resource that had to be hoarded, rather than a renewable gift that grows stronger when it is shared. "Michael," she said, turning to her husband one last time, "please, tell them they are making a mistake." Michael looked at his wife, then at his children, and then at me, the 3 generations of his family that had been torn apart by fear, control, and the misguided assumption that love was something that could be lost, rather than something that multiplied when it was given freely. "I think," he said slowly, "that the mistake was made 13 years ago when we decided that keeping you happy was more important than doing what was right for our children." It was in that moment that Isabella finally understood that she had lost not only her grandchildren but her husband as well. And as I watched her face crumble with the realization that her carefully constructed world was collapsing around her, I felt something I had not expected to feel: pity. The weeks that followed that confrontation unfolded with the inexorable logic of consequences finally catching up to choices made years earlier. Isabella, faced with the reality that her control over her family was dissolving, made increasingly desperate attempts to reassert her authority. She tried forbidding Leo and Chloe from visiting me, a command they politely ignored, pointing out that they were nearly 18 and capable of making their own decisions about how to spend their free time. She attempted to ground them for disrespecting her authority, a punishment that proved impossible to enforce when Michael refused to support it. She even went so far as to threaten to cut off their college funding, only to discover that the money she'd been relying on had been mine all along, and that I'd already established new accounts in both twins' names that she had no access to. But it was her final, most desperate gambit that sealed her fate permanently. I was in my library one evening, helping Leo refine his business plan for the sustainable energy prototype, when my attorney, Harold, called. "Arthur," he said without preamble, "you need to know that Isabella Ashworth has filed a petition with the family court." "What kind of petition?" "She's seeking a restraining order against you on behalf of her minor children. She's claiming that you're psychologically manipulating them, and that your influence constitutes a threat to their well-being." I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. "On what evidence?" "Apparently, she's claiming that your sudden involvement in their lives represents a pattern of predatory behavior designed to alienate them from their parents." "And what does the court say about this?" "The judge has scheduled a hearing for next week. Leo and Chloe will need to testify about their relationship with you and whether they feel manipulated or threatened." After I hung up, I looked at Leo, who had clearly overheard enough of the conversation to understand what was happening. "She's trying to get a court order to keep us away from you, isn't she?" he said quietly. "Yes. Can she do that?" "She can try. But Leo, the judge is going to want to hear from both you and Chloe about how you feel about our relationship. Are you prepared for that?" He set down his calculator and looked at me with a serious expression that reminded me so much of his grandfather. "Grandfather, I've spent the last month getting to know the most generous, intelligent, and loving person I've ever met. Someone who has supported my dreams, encouraged my ambitions, and treated me like an adult capable of making good decisions. I'm not going to let anyone, not even Mom, take that away from me." The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I arrived at the courthouse dressed in my finest navy suit, accompanied by Harold, and carrying a briefcase full of evidence that I hoped wouldn't be necessary to use. Isabella sat across the courtroom with her own attorney, looking pale but determined. Michael sat beside her, though his body language suggested he was there under duress rather than conviction. Judge Patricia Morrison was a woman in her 50s with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who had seen every possible variation of family dysfunction. She reviewed the petition with careful attention before looking up at the assembled parties. "Mrs. Isabella Ashworth," she said, "you're seeking a restraining order to prevent Mr. Arthur Ashworth from having contact with your minor children, Leo and Chloe Ashworth, both age 17. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And the basis for this request?" "Mr. Ashworth has been using his wealth to manipulate my children against me. He's been filling their heads with lies about their family and trying to turn them against their parents." Judge Morrison turned to me. "Mr. Arthur Ashworth, how do you respond to these allegations?" "Your Honor, I have been attempting to build a relationship with my grandchildren after being estranged from them for 13 years. Every interaction I have had with Leo and Chloe has been appropriate, educational, and conducted with their parents' knowledge." "Mrs. Isabella Ashworth, can you provide specific examples of this alleged manipulation?" Isabella launched into a detailed account of my involvement in the twins' lives. The mentorship program, the donations to their school, the visits to my home. But as she spoke, I realized she was making my case for me. Every example she gave demonstrated my genuine interest in the twins' education and well-being. "Mrs. Ashworth," the judge said when Isabella finished, "these activities you've described, mentoring, educational support, providing opportunities for academic advancement, these don't sound like manipulation. They sound like grandparenting." Isabella's attorney leaned forward. "Your Honor, Mr. Ashworth has been absent from these children's lives for 13 years. His sudden, intensive involvement suggests ulterior motives. And what would those motives be? To undermine the parental authority of Mr. and Mrs. Ashworth, and to alienate the children from their mother." Judge Morrison made some notes before speaking again. "I'd like to hear from Leo and Chloe themselves. Leo Ashworth, please approach the bench." Leo stood up with a quiet confidence I'd come to admire, walking to the front of the courtroom with his shoulders straight and his head high. "Leo," Judge Morrison said gently, "I want you to tell me in your own words about your relationship with your grandfather." "Your Honor, 3 months ago, I didn't know my grandfather at all. I thought he was someone who hadn't wanted to be part of our lives. But when I met him through the school mentorship program, I discovered that he's been trying to contact my sister and me for 13 years. How did that make you feel?" "Confused at first. Then hurt that we'd been lied to. Then grateful that he never gave up on us." "Do you feel that your grandfather has manipulated you or pressured you in any way?" "No, Your Honor. He has treated me like an intelligent person capable of making my own decisions. He has supported my dreams and helped me think about my future in ways that no one else ever has." "And how do you feel about your relationship with your parents?" Leo glanced at his father, then at Isabella, before answering carefully. "I love my parents, but I've learned that love doesn't mean accepting lies or giving up my right to make decisions about my own relationships." Judge Morrison nodded. "Chloe Ashworth, please approach." Chloe walked forward with the same quiet dignity her brother had shown, and I felt my heart swell with pride for these remarkable young people. "Chloe, same question. Tell me about your relationship with your grandfather." "Your Honor, my grandfather has given me something I didn't even know I was missing. Unconditional support for who I am, rather than who someone else thinks I should be." "Can you elaborate?" "He celebrates my writing, encourages my creativity, and treats my ideas like they matter. He's built spaces in his home specifically for my interests, and he has never once suggested that I should be different than I am." "Do you feel manipulated by him?" "No, Your Honor. I feel seen by him." The simple honesty of that statement seemed to impact everyone in the courtroom. "And what about your relationship with your parents?" Chloe was quiet for a moment before answering. I love my parents, but I've realized that my mom's love comes with conditions. She loves me when I agree with her, when I make choices she approves of, when I don't ask questions that make her uncomfortable. And my grandfather's love doesn't have conditions. Judge Morrison made more notes before addressing Isabella directly. Mrs. Ashworth, I have listened to your concerns, but I have also listened to your children. These are 17-year-old students who will be legal adults in less than a year. They have expressed clearly that they want a relationship with their grandfather, and that they do not feel manipulated or threatened by him. But, Your Honor, furthermore, the evidence you have presented does not support claims of manipulation. Educational support, mentorship, and family relationship building are not grounds for a restraining order. Isabella's face crumpled as she realized her final gambit had failed. Your petition is denied, Judge Morrison continued. These young people are old enough to make their own decisions about family relationships, and there is no evidence that Mr. Arthur Ashworth poses any threat to their well-being. As we left the courthouse, Isabella approached me one final time. This isn't over, she said, but her voice lacked the conviction it had once carried. Yes, Isabella, I said calmly. It is. You have lost the legal battle. You have lost the moral high ground. And most importantly, you have lost the trust of your children. They are still my children. Yes, they are, and they always will be. But they are also my grandchildren, and they are old enough to decide for themselves what that means. As I watched Isabella walk away, defeated and isolated by her own choices, I felt not triumph, but a deep sadness for all the years that had been wasted, all the relationships that had been damaged by fear and control. But looking at Leo and Chloe standing beside me, both of them tall and confident and ready to face the future, I knew that the best was yet to come. 1 year later, I stood in my garden, watching as Leo demonstrated his sustainable energy prototype to a group of potential investors. His business plan had garnered serious interest, and at 18, he was already being courted by venture capitalists who saw the genius in his innovation. Chloe sat at a nearby table, working on her college application essays. She had been accepted to 3 prestigious universities and was faced with the delightful dilemma of choosing between several excellent paths to pursue her dream of becoming a writer and social advocate. Michael had moved into the guest wing of my house, not as a defeated man in exile, but as a father actively rebuilding his relationship with his children and slowly rediscovering the man he had been before he lost himself in Isabella's expectations. His graphic design business was finally flourishing, now that he was following his own creative vision instead of Isabella's rigid ideas of respectability. Isabella herself had relocated to live with her sister in another state. The twins had seen her twice in the past year. The visits were awkward affairs, where she attempted to mend relationships she had spent 17 years controlling rather than nurturing. The conversations remained polite but distant, hindered by her inability to acknowledge the harm her lies had caused, and her persistent belief that she had been protecting, not manipulating, her children. She just keeps saying she did everything out of love, Chloe told me after their most recent visit. But I don't think she'll ever understand that love and possession are not the same thing. Leo looked up from his presentation to the investors and caught my eye, offering a small smile that filled my heart with warmth. Over the past year, I had watched him transform from a withdrawn, overly serious teenager into a confident young man who understood his own worth and potential. Chloe had undergone an even more dramatic transformation. The guarded, cautious girl who had been afraid to trust her own perceptions had blossomed into a passionate advocate for truth and authenticity. Her writing had gained national attention, and she had already been offered internships with several prominent publications. But more than their individual achievements, I was proud of the people they had become. Kind, honest, and thoughtful young adults who understood that true strength comes from confronting difficult truths rather than hiding from them. Mr. Ashworth, one of the investors, called over to me. "Leo tells us you were his first business mentor. What is your assessment of his potential?" I looked at my grandson, tall and confident, radiating the joy that comes from pursuing one's passion with the full support of those who believe in you. "I think," I said, "that Leo represents the best of what happens when intelligent young people are given the freedom to pursue their dreams without limitations. The funding he is requesting is a fraction of what his innovations will be worth within 5 years." The investors exchanged impressed glances. My reputation in the business community still carried weight, and my endorsement of Leo's project would open doors for him that might otherwise have remained closed. After the investors departed, promising a decision within the week, Leo joined Chloe and me at the outdoor table where we had taken to having dinner together several evenings a week. "How do you think it went?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "I think you are going to have your choice of funding options," I said. "The only question is which partnership will best serve your long-term goals." "I still can't believe this is real," Chloe said, looking around at the garden, the house, the life we had built together over the past year. "A year ago, we didn't even know you existed." "You always existed in my heart," I said softly. "I just had to wait for you to find your way back to me." "Do you think Mom will ever understand what she lost?" Leo asked. It was a question he had been asking in various forms for months, and my answer was always the same. "I think your mother loves you both very much, but I don't believe she will ever understand that love means allowing people to make their own choices, even when those choices do not align with your own preferences." "Do you forgive her?" Chloe asked. "For the 13 years we lost?" I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness was a concept I had been contemplating a great deal lately, not because I felt any external pressure to forgive, but because I wanted to understand what forgiveness would truly mean in this context. "I do not forgive the lies she told or the years she stole from us," I said finally. "But I am grateful for the people those experiences have shaped you into becoming." "What do you mean?" "I mean that if you had grown up with a grandfather who spoiled you and never challenged you to think for yourselves, you might not have developed the strength and wisdom that make you so remarkable now. So you think the pain was worth it?" "I think the pain taught you to value truth and authenticity in ways that children who have never been lied to might not be able to comprehend. And I believe that will make you both extraordinary adults." Michael joined us as the sun was setting, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the relaxed expression of a man who had finally stopped fighting battles he could not win. "How did the presentation go?" he asked Leo. "Grandfather thinks I'm going to have multiple funding offers." "I don't think it," I corrected. "I know it. Your project is brilliant, your presentation was professional, and your business plan is solid. The only question is whether you are ready for the responsibility that comes with serious investment." "I'm ready," Leo said with quiet confidence. "I've had good teachers." As we sat around the table, sharing wine and conversation and the comfortable intimacy that comes from genuine family connection, I reflected on the year that had transformed all of our lives. I had set out to reclaim my grandchildren from someone who had stolen them through lies and manipulation. But what I discovered was that in reclaiming them, I had also reclaimed parts of myself that I had forgotten existed. The nurturing instincts I had suppressed during my years of building a business. The capacity for unconditional love that I had shielded behind walls of professional achievement. Isabella had been wrong about many things, but she had been especially wrong about the nature of love. She had seen it as a finite resource, something to be hoarded and controlled, but real love multiplies when it is shared. The more I loved Leo and Chloe, the more love I had to give. The more they loved me, the more capacity they had for loving others. "Grandfather," Chloe said as we prepared to go inside, "can I ask you something?" "Always. Are you happy with how everything turned out?" I looked around the table at these three people who had become the center of my world. My son, who had finally learned to trust his own judgment. My grandchildren, who had chosen truth over comfort and authenticity over security. "I am happy that you are both free to become whoever you are meant to be," I said. "I am happy that you understand your own worth and potential, and I am happy that you know you are loved completely, without conditions or expectations." "But are you happy?" Leo pressed. "After everything that happened, after all the years of fighting, are you at peace?" I considered the question seriously. Was I at peace, or was I simply victorious? "I am satisfied," I said finally. "I set out to give you both something you had been denied. The love of a grandfather who believes in your potential and supports your dreams. I have succeeded in that goal." "And Isabella?" Chloe asked quietly. "Do you feel bad about what happened to her?" "I feel sad about the choices she made that led to her isolation. But Chloe, Isabella created her own exile by refusing to share you, by lying about me, and by treating love like a competition she had to win. She lost everything," Leo observed. "She lost what she tried to keep by force. But Leo, she could still have a relationship with you both if she chose to build one based on honesty and respect instead of control and manipulation. Do you think she ever will?" "I think Isabella will do what Isabella has always done. Whatever serves her need to see herself as the victim rather than the architect of her own consequences." As we walked into the house together, I thought about the legacy I was leaving my grandchildren. Not just financial security, though they had that. Not just educational opportunities, though those were important. But something more valuable. The understanding that relationships built on truth and respect are worth fighting for, and that love given freely is the most powerful force in the world. Isabella had tried to build a family through control and manipulation. She had lost them by refusing to trust them. I had reclaimed that family through patience, honesty, and unconditional support. I had won them by treating them like the intelligent, capable people they were. Some wounds don't heal. They become an inheritance. The wound Isabella had inflicted on our family had become my grandchildren's inheritance of strength, wisdom, and the understanding that truth, however painful, is always preferable to comfortable lies. Standing in my library that night, surrounded by the evidence of the life I had built and the family I had reclaimed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a decade. Complete satisfaction. The war was over. Truth had triumphed over lies. Love had conquered control. And my grandchildren, brilliant, strong, authentic, and free, would carry that victory into their own futures, teaching their own children someday that a family is built not through force, but through the careful cultivation of trust, respect, and unconditional love. Isabella would have to live with her choices for the rest of her life, but Leo and Chloe would live with mine, and that made all the difference.